Hello and welcome. My name is Narelle Doan, and I am the Director of Marketing for Viking Pure Solutions. And we are very excited to present this panel to you today. At Viking Pure, our mission is to create safer, healthier environments, and that goes beyond our core customer base. We are very proud to host this event today because we believe in amplifying voices that are challenging stigma and reshaping care. This week, which happens to be Dementia Awareness and Dementia Action Week, it's especially timely to be talking about a type of dementia that is less well known, and that is younger onset dementia. The work of Lorenzo's house speaks to a value that we share, that every person, regardless of age or diagnosis, deserves dignity, safety, and innovation in the spaces they live and heal. And conversations like this really move us all forward. So before we get into the panel, which we're very excited about, I do want to note we will be taking questions and we'd be happy to answer those at the end. Please feel free to put those in the chat, whether you're joining us on LinkedIn or through the SQL platform here. Without further ado, let's get into the conversation. So Patti, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are so honored to be here. And thank you to you, Narelle, and your incredible team for the beautiful job that you do in really amplifying voices. We are so honored to be here. I am Patti, and I am the programs lead for Lorenzo's house, and I am honored to be joined by two of my dear friends and two of our incredible youth leads at this year's Youth Summit, Louis and Francesca. They are like me. I am a daughter of younger onset dementia. My beautiful mom walked with younger onset dementia, was diagnosed when I was graduating from college. And until I found Lorenzo's house, I had no place to feel seen and supported. I ended up in a Zoom room with our founder, Diana, and it was the first time I really felt like I had a home. And then I got to meet these incredible, beautiful souls, Louis and Francesca, who both walked this journey. And when we were going to screen our short film, which is a 14-minute short film, which tells the story of Lorenzo's house and shares beautiful Diana, our founder, her beautiful boys, and beautiful Larry himself. And then after the short film, we'll have the opportunity to hear more from Louis and Francesca. So just so honored to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump into the short film, and then we'll spend some time together getting to know Louis and Francesca and their incredible stories. As I said, we are Lorenzo's house, and we are unapologetically focused on younger onset dementia. So we empower the sons, daughters, and their families affected by younger onset dementia. So here's the film. Make it full.
The sorrow and the suffering can be so great that I almost can't get out of it when I think about what's happening to my husband. It's like this grief that repeats itself every day. And I know that if I sit in it too long, I might not get up. So I get up and I choose living, and that's what he would want. We got lucky with love. We met the night I moved to Chicago, and today, some 30 years later, we have true love, two beautiful and brave sons, a loving little dog we named Desmond Tutu, our little archbishop, and we have what I call this diagnosis of the family.
My dad was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and so since then things kind of changed, with a big change in dynamic, especially being in high school at the time. My brother was in middle school, so it was a big change to kind of go from having him care for us to us caring for him.
He was a really fun guy who would always play with me and my brother, and is always so kind to everyone around him.
He could walk into a room and become friends with anyone. He was super smart, so I'm told the smartest guy in the room, and just loved talking to people, meeting new people.
My husband is love. He is kind, so kind. He just radiates this kindness. Humble and a listener, the kind of listener that leans in. He's a man of such integrity, affectionate and handsome and such a gentleman. He has this soft ping on his phone, and it pings a couple times a day. It used to ping a couple times a day. And I asked, what is that for? And he said, oh, baby, that's a reminder to forgive, forgive self and others and the world and just start again. And that's the kind of goodness, my husband brings this world. Sharing deep conversations about all kinds of topics was something we loved. And it seemed like almost overnight, we weren't having those conversations anymore. When I think back on the behaviors prior to the diagnosis, which for us showed up, a few years prior, all those behaviors make sense now. The culture in our home changed. This diagnosis can suck the joy out of a home because it brings on these complicated behaviors. And for us, those, first showed up as dad detaching from his sons.
Essentially, everything is to be done for him. Eating, making breakfast, making lunch, making dinner, that's all been having to be done for him for years now. But I'd say now, just basic things like putting clothes on, getting into bed, getting out of bed, sitting down in a chair. Pretty much everything needs to be explained to him thoroughly. Every 10 seconds, I'd say, that's about his span right now.
I think the biggest thing is just I can't have a conversation with him anymore. Losing that, I think, is really a lot, because even though he's there and he's still talking, I can't comprehend what he's saying. So it's kind of an extra thing for us.
The progression was very aggressive. And as a younger family, we were completely caught off guard. Younger onset cases are a sizable niche. Over 4 million people worldwide are living with younger onset dementia, with a reported 200% uptick. Yet the stigma is thick and layered. Dementia is not just an older person's condition. Hundreds and thousands of us are here, and we are unseen, misunderstood, undiagnosed, misdiagnosed. We need a place to find each other.
That's why we need to raise awareness about young onset Alzheimer's, because they don't have a place to go. They feel incredibly alone. No one understands. People don't understand them. People don't believe them. So many times we need to write letters of advocacy because their church or their community or their neighborhood needs proof that, hey, they have a cognitive impairment because they're acting differently than we expect.
We typically think of Alzheimer's disease as a disease of older people, and it is. But if the symptoms begin before the age of 65, which is again uncommon for Alzheimer's, typical Alzheimer's disease, that's considered younger onset.
Every family, every person absorbs this news differently. For me, I was in full denial, convinced that we were going to be the first family to beat Alzheimer's. I realized quickly that while there were a few really smart resources for families living with younger onset, they were few and far between. And still, there was virtually nothing for our sons. My career has been in urban education. For the past 25 years, I served as co-founder and president of a network of public schools, all on the south side of Chicago. And now life has me on this new path. And I thought maybe I could use my experience to make a difference and fill a care and connection gap in this new space.
His name was Larry, but in our house we called him Lorenzo. And therefore the concept of Lorenzo's house came up with.
After my first connection with Lorenzo's house, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder, truthfully. I have met so many beautiful people, and they're also navigating this difficult journey with grace, and we just help each other tremendously.
Our tagline at Lorenzo's house is "We bring light." And the idea is that we are shifting the narrative. Our audacious goal is to unite every daughter, son, and their family affected by younger onset dementia. We are shifting the narrative. No longer isolated, we are now healing in community, and we are advocating for dementia justice. A world where we are normalizing conversations and dismantling misperceptions, changing the way society thinks and responds to dementia. It's time, and with our daughters and sons as our compass, we can do this. Our virtual model is designed exclusively for the daughters, sons, and their families of younger onset dementia. Our 3 pillar programs include our match, our clubs, and our summit. Our match is a one-on-one care partner to care partner connection with a peer who understands.
My connection with Robin was an instant relief. Someone my age that knew what I was going through without even having to explain my whole story. Our stories were so similar, knowing that I can call or text someone in a moment of celebration, concern, grief, sadness, and happiness, and they'll pick up and just get it without having to give all the extra pieces and information that's needed to truly understand the impact of those situations. It's like nothing I could have ever imagined and that I could ever find. The light in our match is knowing that I'm not alone in this journey.
Our clubs are virtual spaces to find community, share insights, and learn care techniques. We host monthly light clubs for our youth. We host a brunch and a lounge for our care partner spouses. And our Shine On session is a space to navigate loss after a loved one has passed.
After Light Club, I feel calm, relaxed, and ready for the rest of my day. Light Club helps me to think deeply. I listen and share, and it gives me a place where I can discuss my dad's condition and get tips and ideas from other kids that would make life easier. It is a good place. Everyone shares similar experiences, and we can all relate to each other.
When I was 10, I found a light. The Light Club has helped me learn how to show light to my dad and how to cope with all of my stress and emotions.
I think one of the best parts of Light Club was learning from young people at different stages of the journey, and being surprised by things that we're worried and scared about may actually surprise us as being a moment that brings us closer to our loved one. But then also a powerful moment within Light Club was realizing we all have very similar questions that sometimes aren't asked, and this idea that we can come together and try and answer them or figure out what resources there are to answer.
Our annual summit is a worldwide virtual youth event designed and led by the daughters and sons of younger onset. It's a space to find community, to learn, to heal, to advocate, and to elevate the collective wisdom of our young people.
Me and my mom were out to lunch one day. We brought this camp idea, and the camp is to bring kids like me and my brother who have a parent with Alzheimer's together and have them connect with one another.
Hi everyone, my name is Jalen and I am honored to be Lorenzo's House Youth Lead for Lorenzo's Youth Summit. As a daughter to a father living with younger onset dementia, I understand how isolating and complicated things can be and how hard it is to find peers who understand. Our free virtual worldwide event unites the daughters and sons of younger onset dementia. Together, we create a space to heal in community and advocate for dementia justice. We share lived experience and build lifelong connections. We amplify our collective wisdom and create a more informed and empathetic world.
It's a way to give these kids support and a community of other kids also going through the same thing. And so that if they're ever having a hard day, they can reach out to someone in the camp who knows exactly what they're going through and have someone to talk to about it.
What Lorenzo's house is doing is really incredible, and Diana has just made tremendous bounds with this program already.
We are growing faster than we imagined because we are so needed. As a global citizen and justice activists, to know that our work is garnering trust from families and respect from experts in the field across state lines and country borders is incredibly inspiring. There's real movement in dementia at Lorenzo's house, and it's being led by younger families with lived experience. Innovation is happening here.
I am determined to make meaning of all of this. My guy, who is such a gentle, spiritual soul, a man of so much goodness and light, my Lorenzo is now walking so bravely every day. And while his condition is slowly taking him from us, I feel compelled to stand up and to fight back and to respond as boldly as I know how. And maybe we can turn all of this sorrow and this story into something that heals. I've had the privilege of connecting with so many lovely people, and it's when we get connected, I find, and we get to tell pieces of our story that we begin to kind of put ourselves back together a little bit. And we share a bond as care partner families, like warrior-like families, really, who are showing up every day with crazy love and crazy strength, and also so much sacrifice and sorrow. And so we have stories to tell, and Lorenzo's house will be a platform to tell our story as a way to heal. So it's time to build. There is a lot of work to do. And I believe that when we build and design and scale, that we need to access the voices of people who are walking the journey. Care partner families, professionals in the field, allies, donors, and friends, please bring light with Lorenzo's house. Stay close. We need you. When I first imagined Lorenzo's house, I wanted to do something for my husband, in honor of him. And now, hopefully, it's going to be for families everywhere.
Thank you for taking 14 minutes to watch that film with us. I have watched it many times, and every time different pieces catch me. So thank you for taking that time. I do just want to highlight one piece from the film. We are less than 1 month away from our free virtual youth summit that will take place on June 20th and 21st. If you know any sons or daughters who are currently walking this journey, who have a parent with younger onset dementia of any form, or have walked this journey, please share this free virtual event with them. It is an incredible opportunity to bring together young people from across the globe in community. So our first year in 2021, we had 21 young people in a Zoom room. Last year, we had over 200 with a projected 350 this year. So please join us. We are in 49 US states and 17 countries. So please, if you know any family, please share this virtual event with them. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to open it up to our incredible panelists. So I'm so sorry. My throat stopped working. My apologies. I'm going to open it up to our incredible panelists. I have had the beautiful opportunity to be connected with both of these incredible people for over a year now. And I am going to start with Louis. Louis, I had the pleasure of meeting on our Young Professionals board here at Lorenzo's house, and he is an incredible advocate. So Louis, would you share a little bit about your personal story? Tell us about yourself, where you live, your career, what brought you to Lorenzo's house, and what is your journey like and what has brought you to your current role that you're in right now. So go ahead, Louis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patti. So my name is Louis Cordero, and I'm based here in Chicago. I'm currently pursuing my master's in public health with a focus in population aging. And my connection to Lorenzo's house stems from my personal commitment to give back to the young caregiving community that I've been part of most of my life. My journey began at the age of 5 when I was taking care of my mother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And eventually, during my high school time, she would be diagnosed with younger onset dementia. And around that same time, my late grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So these experiences really shaped my view of caregiving and approach to care with a deep sense of curiosity and just wanting to learn more. And that curiosity led me to pursue a Watson Fellowship where I went to different countries to figure out more what's happening over there. How are they aging? How are these care settings taking care of them? And today I continue that advocacy work, being a volunteer ombudsman for the city of Chicago, going to the nursing homes, talking to these residents, as well as working at the University of Chicago Medicine in the SHARE network where we advocate for supporting healthy aging through education and resources.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis. You are such an advocate, and something that always reigns true when you share about your journey is just this desire to help others, right? This desire to make the world a little bit better for the next son or daughter that is in a similar place. Something that you have shared with me is this desire to also get into schools and to make sure that schools are aware of what resources and support are out there for young carers. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then Francesca, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And thank you both to Narelle and Patti for having us. So my name is Dr. Francesca Falzarano. I am based in Los Angeles during the academic year, but I am a lifelong New Yorker. I am an assistant professor at the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology at the University of Southern California, where I direct a federally funded program of research where my lab, the Falzarano Family Caregiving Lab, really focuses on establishing a scientific evidence base on the very multifaceted and multidimensional role of caregiving. And this was my way of also amplifying my own story, which began when I was 13. My mom receiving a formal diagnosis of dementia at 14 and seeing that just from such a young age and how that is a diagnosis of family, as Diana so eloquently put it. And so living that journey for about 17 years, caring for both of my parents, this was my way of understanding what was happening to my family, but also finding a way to memorialize and honor my parents and the journey they walked, as well as to, continue to advocate that we exist. We are all in this kind of world where if we just need to connect to each other and learn each other's stories. And that's how I think we amplify change. And so that's my commitment with what I'm doing out in California.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the pieces that really, you can just feel your passion for really amplifying young carers and really this idea of just making the world a little bit better for the next Francesca or the next Louis or the next Patti, right? How do we continue to not only raise awareness, but really enact change and think about these innovation and what can innovation look like for family caregivers? So thank you both for being here and being such beautiful advocates in this space. Francesca, I would like to start with you. My first official question for you is, how did this diagnosis impact your identity, relationships, or the day-to-day rhythm of life as a 13-year-old, as a 14-year-old, and walking this journey for so long?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. And I think it looks so different for us youth carers, because if we think about the point of development, where we are in life as teenagers, it's those very formative years are so critical. And so when my mother received the dementia diagnosis, it was like my childhood stopped overnight. Yeah. And I had to learn how to become very malleable around dementia now being my third parent. and being able to observe. I was observing the changes happening to my mom, but my family was not given any resources or information about dementia themselves. So they didn't know how to communicate this to somebody who's so young. And, you know, just from an identity perspective, I think it impacted my social relationships. You know, it impacted my ability to connect with others at school because there were no families that looked like mine. And my day-to-day very quickly became from, like, you know, going to dance after school to helping my dad administer my mother's medication, or, you know, do her feedings. And I just saw a lot at a young age. And I'm learning, you know, almost 20 years later, how impactful those experiences are during those years, and how we kind of carry that as part of our identity, I think.
For sure. I think something that you said that really we hear so often with families is this idea of you were observing all of these changes and you were noticing all these things that happen. We often hear families ask, like, how much do I tell my children? How much do I talk to my teen about it? And no matter if you're having the conversations or not, we're taking it all in. We are seeing it, we're observing it. So how can we begin to open that dialogue, and how can we begin to normalize conversations so that we can dismantle this misperceptions and start to have a world or a society that embraces and understands younger onset dementia? Louis, my next question is for you. What are some of the unique challenges of a younger onset dementia diagnosis and navigating this journey as a young person?
Yeah, so similar to what Francesca was saying, you know, when my mother received her diagnosis during high school, there was always this guilt of, do I go to school? Do I stay at home? And when I did disclose information at my school, they didn't really offer like much resources. And then during college, that's when she passed away. In fact, during finals of my first semester. So it was difficult there to navigate, you know, academia and then my family and finding that balance. And that's why I advocate, you know, trying to disclose that information, to seek out accommodations and support, because the more people know, the more that they're better able to support you. You know, in high school, I could have gotten accommodations to potentially miss school or go half a day and then be at home, because there was definitely that cultural guilt, because family within the Latino communities is paramount. So it was just a constant balance of, do I go to school or do I, you know, be with my family, and trying to reconcile those two identities.
That idea of reconciling two identities while navigating the guilt. And then you're adding in this other layer of the cultural component, right? Like, what does that mean for you as a family? And what does that mean for you in your family culture? So thank you for sharing all of that. And then thank you for also highlighting that if you are able to share your story and you are able to advocate, there are accommodations both in high school and in middle school and in college that can be really supportive. So thank you for bringing awareness and light to that as well. Francesca, what about for you? What would you say are some of the unique challenges?
I mean, Louis touched on it so perfectly on all the things. It just the fact that, you know, you are a teenager, you are, you know, we were kind of dealing with the word caregiver before we were able to drive a car or go to prom or do, you know, graduate from high school. All these extremely meaningful events, and for me, I was like, where is my mom? And it's a very paradoxical reality. I also, being, you know, my parents were born in Italy, I also had that very strong cultural presence in my household. And it was not something we knew how to talk about. It was not something I knew I could go to tell my teachers about. And I think at the time, and I'm so happy to see that there are these accommodations that have been put in place since I went through this journey. But I think at the time I got a lot of, oh my God, this poor girl, that's terrible. Like, there was a lot of sympathy, but there was no support in place. And so that was just the biggest glaring gap where I looked around and I was just, I didn't understand why it was just me. And then just being exposed to more and more people who have walked this path, there's a clear gap here that I think we all need to put our stories together to advocate for.
For sure. Because when we share our stories, like both of you just so bravely did, and Diana in the video, that's when others begin to feel seen and supported. And then it empowers another person to share their story. And the more that we share our story and we raise awareness, the more that things are going to change. And that's why places like Lorenzo's house are so important, right? Because it's this collective space where the sons and daughters can come together and they can feel safe in sharing their story. I think another piece you touched on that I often hear and often am also just grappling with as a person is this identity of a caregiver, right? And so we often hear so often with our children and our teens, especially, that they don't identify as a caregiver. They identify as a son or a daughter. We even have this beautiful boy, he's 10, and he often is like, Patti, I am not a caregiver. I just ride my bike home from school each day and I sit with my mom or sit with my dad so my mom can work for a couple hours, right? And the stigma can be so heavy even around the word caregiver, and there's this added societal pressure to the word. And so even some of our young people are not accessing resources because they're not identifying in that way. And so how can we begin to share our stories and not put pressure on that word, but begin to share our stories so that caregivers across all ages have all the supports and appreciation and are embraced in society? So thank you both for your perspectives. The next question is for you, Louis, and it's about what support systems. And I know there weren't a ton for you when you were walking this journey as a young boy, but formally or informally were the most helpful for you. And really, what role has community played in your journey then and in your journey now? And how did you find support?
Yeah, so I would say early on, I would say, being raised within the Catholic tradition at home, it was my faith. My faith is what kept me grounded and going, knowing that everything happens for a reason. And although it's difficult and hard, there's a greater force guiding that path and leading that path. So I never really sought out any formal resources because I just didn't know that existed. Now, however, a decade later, I know numerous resources, you all being one, but also here in Chicago, there's these free resources given by the city of Chicago, these day centers and so forth. So there's definitely more things available, but during that time, I just didn't know, nor did any of my family know of the resources available for our family. So I think it's all about, researching and seeking it out, but also trusting yourself. And in this case, trusting my faith. And it did help me continue on the journey and know that although it's hard, that there is a greater force guiding my path.
Yeah. We often talk about this idea of like, who's your chosen community, right? And for you, it was your faith and it was your faith community. For me, my family didn't show up in the way that I had hoped that they would. And so it was really leaning in on my friends and leaning in on other social supports that were out there and building my own support system that was self-created and not, and really looking for what are some of those resources. And I agree with you, Louis. It's easy now to reflect and be like, man, there are some great resources in Chicago for you. For me, I'm like, there are some great resources in Seattle, but caregivers are so tired, right? And so the power of connecting with a place like Lorenzo's house, hopefully along the way, to help connect you to resources or connect you to other people who maybe are in a local, we do our match, right? So if I was to connect someone to Francesca and she's in New York, she can be like, oh, there's this resource and this resource, right? We understand this condition and this journey and what's happening in our local communities. So the power of connecting with organizations that then can help you connect to some of the resources that are out there. So thank you for sharing. Francesca, for you, how has connecting with others who understand this unique experience really changed your perspective?
I think shared experience is the most powerful tool for an individual. And, kind of circling back on what Louis brought up, I didn't have resources or support. I didn't know anybody who had this shared experience. And I think when we are walking this journey, we recognize that there is a ceiling or a capacity to the empathy that people are able to provide when they have not actually walked, in our shoes. And so I think as caregivers, as warriors, as Diana called us, we kind of tense up. We automatically resist and we don't think they're going to understand. But when somebody who's kind of has the same journey, the same life that's mirrored yours, it just brings down all those barriers that you feel like you need to protect yourself, and you feel seen for the first time. And, I found Lorenzo's house a year and some change into my grief journey, after both of my parents passed away. And in 30 seconds of Patti meeting me, she asked me about my mother. Did you walk this journey? And for the first time I felt seen. And I think that really helped me start to heal and kind of continue on this path.
Yeah. Well, and so much of the healing, especially when you find yourself after you've walked this journey, it happens after, right? Something that we've really noticed is, our focus at Lorenzo's house was always kind of like on the sons and daughters who are currently walking the journey. But what we've learned as we continue to lean in and listen is there's a whole nother journey that happens after your person passes. And you often are in this place where you have this understanding, you have this experience, and you're ready to fight back, right? One of the big things that we did last year at Summit was put the word dementia in front of the word justice and begin to grapple with what that means. What does that mean for Lewis in Chicago? And what does that mean for Patti in Seattle? And what does that mean for Anderline in Kenya? And how can we come together with shared experience and really just begin to change the way that society thinks about younger onset dementia and open up these conversations. So thankful for Narelle and Viking Pure for being like, let's have this conversation. Let's put young carers, let's put innovation in dementia. Let's talk about stigma, which leads perfectly to, I have a couple more questions for both of you. And one of them is, did you experience stigma as a young person? And Lewis, I'll start with you, but really, did you experience stigma as a young person walking with a parent with younger onset dementia? And then how did you navigate those experiences while empowering yourself and others?
Yeah, thank you, Patti, for asking. That's such an important question. And that takes me back to when my mother and I would go to an amusement park. So, for example, going to Six Flags or Disney. And I remember, and during that time, she had to have a wheelchair. And I remember, pushing her within the wheelchair and the stares that we would get. And I still think back to those moments, the judgment, the immediate judgment that we got. Sometimes because, we were able to skip the front of the line, which I enjoyed because I was like, oh yeah, you can do this again.
Yeah.
But at the same
That's
time,
so real.
yeah. But at the same time, I was just in shock how people were just so immediate to judge and make their judgments because they saw someone who was young being in this wheelchair. So for me, that really taught me, again, to have an open mind and an open heart. Throughout my caregiving journey, I was always adapting and evolving to her evolving needs. And I think that greater society has to do that and just be very open-minded and less judgmental when we see things that aren't the status quo or aren't the quote unquote normal based on societal standards. Because at the end of the day, like we'll come across somebody most likely in a wheelchair. So we need to normalize these things and not be judgmental, but be of help. How can we be supportive? Because I think that's what I would have wanted in those situations when I was going to these amusement parks and, trying to have my mother continue living a normal life.
For sure. This power of actually where your empowerment has come from now, Lewis, is that now you are empowered to show up for others in a different way, right? This experience, you can't walk this experience and not be changed. And so now it's allowed you to have empathy and understanding and, this shared connection with someone who may be walking that experience, which allows you to show up better. But then as you start to share these stories and as we start to raise awareness, hopefully it becomes something that is more universal, right? It shouldn't be that thing. And then the other thing I was thinking about is I'm just imagining you, pushing your mom through Disneyland in a wheelchair, and how empowering it might have been for some people to see you in that role, though, right? Like, and you didn't have time to address every stare or to every weird look that you were getting. You were just going along, and how that just doing that could have really empowered or inspired someone else or helped them to feel seen. So thank you for sharing that experience. What about you, Francesca? Did you experience stigma as a daughter?
Absolutely. And I think the stigma is so layered and from multiple directions. So like Lewis so eloquently put, the stigma against the person walking the journey and with the dementia. I also think we had a cultural stigma in my family and my extended family with what dementia means and what it looks like. And a lot of people did not know what to say. So they kind of just didn't say anything at all and kind of dropped off after a while. And I feel like we can see, and I'm just like reliving my high school years. I can see how societal stigma kind of trickles down, and we self-perpetuate these stereotypes as well. And we kind of bring them on implicitly, because I remember being embarrassed when my mom had, symptoms of aphasia and was struggling to articulate her words. And it was like a defense mechanism, I think, for me at the time. We still face the stigma over, the decisions that we made around her care for so many years, despite the fact that we did it with the best information that we had at the time. So I think from the healthcare system, from our peers, from just a society in general, it's kind of coming at us from all ways. And it's because we weren't having these conversations for a very, very long time.
For sure. Well, and I think the piece that you just brought up around healthcare systems, right? There's many times I end up in Zoom rooms with families who are walking this journey. As part of my role is to connect when a family reaches up to Lorenzo's house, myself or a trained volunteer, right, is that person that meets them in the Zoom room. And so often I hear from families that their doctors will say, you're too young for dementia, or this is not what could be happening. And they're on their third or fourth or fifth diagnosis, right? And they're trying to navigate. They're like, I know it's not menopause. I know it's not bipolar. I know it's not PTSD or depression or anxiety. And so they're having to navigate these moments of stigma that are happening even in their doctor's office, where they think that they're coming for support. So thank you for bringing up all those different reasons, all those different ideas. We have one more formal question for both of you, and then we have some extra, some bonus that we have, but I do want to open it up again to the audience. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything that they would like to share, please feel free to put it in the chat. Lewis and Francesca and myself would be happy to answer any questions that we have, but I do just want to name that there's an opportunity for questions. But if there aren't any questions, we have a couple more, so we'll keep going. But, kind of our final formal question is, and I'm going to start with you, Lewis, is if you could give a bit of light and encouragement to a young person who is just starting this journey, what would it be?
So I would just encourage you all to just keep an open mind with an open heart. Allow that curiosity to expand and challenge your way of thinking. I know it's going to be hard because it initially was, but I transformed that difficulty or challenge into curiosity. And that curiosity allowed me to constantly evolve. Like I mentioned, my mother had schizophrenia. And I remember when she would have a hallucination and say she's seeing a tiger. And because I was young, I'd be like, I want to see that tiger as well. And although, yes, it was scary, I always grounded myself in if that was me, what would I want somebody else to do? So I always took such an empathetic approach to try to provide the best care that I knew then. And I was eventually able to do that more formally with my grandmother as well. And again, keep your mind open and don't necessarily oblige by the status quo. And I say that because eventually, as my mother progressed through her journey, she no longer ate with a spoon or fork. She would eat with her hand. And here in the United States, we have such a high stigma that it has to be X, Y, and Z. We're not open to A, B, C, or E going a different direction. So I really would say, keep an open mind, don't follow the status quo, and be okay to change. You can, and there's so much support out there. Just seek it out. And when you think you can't, remind yourself that you can. And know that this is an experience that not every person has. And to be able to care for somebody, I think is the true human experience and human connection that we all thrive and long for. So don't be afraid, keep an open mind, and you can.
That's so beautiful. I'm like, I just want all of that written down. Can you write that all down for me, and I can send it to everybody when they're feeling discouraged?
We are recording this session.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's being recorded. Okay, good. I'm gonna keep that. It's gonna be the little video clip of Lewis that we all send to each other when we're feeling like we need a little support. Thank you for that. That was so beautiful. I think, one of the pieces that you said right at the beginning when you were talking about it was like, you always put yourself in her shoes, right? And if we can begin to see another person's point of view, or we can begin to put ourselves in another person's position, whether they're living with dementia, whether they're a caregiver, whether they're a care partner, whether they're a 13-year-old who is walking this journey with their dad, then we can begin to show up with an open mind and with empathy and with true understanding. So I love that. Keep an open mind, right? Like that if everyone did that, the world would be just such a beautiful place, because it just leads to understanding, and it just leads to leaning in and listening, and it just leads to compassion. So thank you for that. Francesca, what about you? What light and encouragement do you have to offer?
So, I mean, everything that you both have touched upon, empathy, love, and open-mindedness, I think is so critical. And I think those of us who have been dealt these cards, and I hate welcoming people into this group, I hate it, but I do think we have been dealt it for a very particular reason. And that is to show the world that we can transform pain into purpose, to drive change. If we can just make somebody, the next, as you said, the next Francesca, make a terrible situation just a little bit easier because of our ability to speak out. And I think that is what collectively we need to do, is constantly fuel pain into purpose. And we need to celebrate the beautiful lives that, our loved ones lived. For so long, dementia was like our dirty little secret. It was, there was shame and stigma, and, I did not say my mom's name enough. Nobody said my mom's name enough. We're focused on the dementia and not the beautiful mother, wife, friend, sister she was. And so that is my goal, is to we just need to do this. We can't do it for ourselves. We need to do this in honor for the people that we are really at the forefronts of caring for. And we need to be trailblazers and telling stories to inform change.
That is so beautiful. I'm like, oh, well, now I have more quotes that I'm writing down. This one that I just wrote down that you just said was, turning our pain into purpose to drive change. I think that is so powerful. I mean, we're all here because we experience some heartbreak, or we experience some suffering, but then we are here and we are continuing to show up for ourselves, right? There's a piece of this that's for you. It's for the 14-year-old Francesca that needed Francesca, right? It's for Lewis, who was walking this journey. It's for myself, that young adult that I needed to navigate these important milestones with my mom, right? We are all here for that reason. But we've also had this struggle and heartbreak, and now it's going to turn our pain into purpose, and to help others feel seen and supported, and to really advocate and drive change and become that next generation of leaders to make it a little bit better. So thank you. I do see we have a question, and thank you, Alex. And yeah, Lewis and Francesca are incredible. So I couldn't agree that they are phenomenal as well. And the question is, what is a common misconception you hear about early onset dementia, and how have you addressed it in conversation or practice? And I open it up for either of you to start. I'm also happy to start.
I guess I can kick that off. So I think, because people are being diagnosed younger, there's always just it's difficult to diagnose. So, for example, when I was abroad in some of these different countries, there definitely was a misconception of like, oh no, they have depression, or oh no, they have some other health condition. So there was a lack of belief, basically, and because of that lack of belief, that leads to less early intervention or less education, because I feel once families have that diagnosis, they know how to act upon it or plan next steps, whether it's advanced care planning and all those types of things. So I think that there's just this misconception of not actually believing if somebody is 40, 35, 45. In my mother's case, she was around 50 or 49. So there wasn't that belief.
Totally. So true. Francesca,
Can
anything?
I just jump on? Yeah, it's 100%. People are saying something is wrong with my loved one, and we're being kind of shoo-shooed by the healthcare providers and the healthcare system, which, in my house we took as, God's word. And we really respected what they had to say and what they were telling us. I also think a misconception is dementia looks the same. It's going to, start off looking the same for everybody, that it's memory loss and what we typically think when we think Alzheimer's, but the symptoms are wide and vast depending on the type of dementia. And then I think, and it's unfortunate, but on the family caregiver side, there is a misconception that we get diagnosis and there will be like this whole gateway kind of unlocked for us. But really the most support and attention we're getting from the doctor is during the process of diagnosis. And then, as I've said before, it's diagnose and adios. And caregivers are then like, wait a minute, where's my support? Where do I get information? Where do I find help? Where do I, and the way that our system is built, the onus is on caregivers to find the support when they're, we're all expecting it from our healthcare providers. And so, just knowing that these exist and calling them out, I think is also very important, because that's how we're going to start changing each of these things, because it's a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was thinking, both of the things, right? The path to diagnosis and the fact that you're continuing having to advocate that your person, both to the doctors and to the healthcare providers, but also to your family and your friends. There were so many times that people were like, well, your mom looks good. She looks fine. And I'm like, no, actually, she is experiencing cognitive changes and it is causing her to feel X, Y, and Z. For my mom, a big part of it was that she really withdrew from social situations and from conversations. And she got really sad at the beginning of her diagnosis because she had such a hard time being part of conversations, but she would still smile and she would still sit there. So people thought that she was fine, but she wasn't my mom at that point, right? And so those things were changing. And so it's this continual advocacy to doctors and healthcare workers and friends and family members, right? Like kind of almost having to convince other family members that there's a cognitive change happening. And then how do we address it? We address it because we're having conversations about it right now, right? The biggest thing we can do is normalize these conversations. We can have these conversations here in beautiful, brave, safe spaces, but we can also have those conversations out in the world. How do we get to the general society and start talking about dementia and start talking about younger onset dementia and start talking about young carers? And how we do that is by giving young carers like Louis and Francesca and the millions of other across the globe a platform to start to have these conversations, because we understand this experience more intimately than anyone. We understand it better than neurologists and doctors. So there should be a Francesca or a Louis or a Patti or one of the thousands of others on every panel, at every conference, on every podcast, in every webinar. So we have just immense gratitude for Narelle and her team for seeing Lorenzo's house and for recognizing the need and the importance. I'd love to just real quickly, before I hand it to Narelle to end, I just would love to share my screen one last time. And just, there were these beautiful ways to join our community that were in the short film. But please introduce us to families, partners, and experts. Our audacious goal is to reach every single family affected by younger onset dementia. So when we have conversations like this, we are beginning to reach more families. Follow us on social media. We are at Lorenzo's House. Can sign up for our newsletter by going to our website, lorenzoshouse.org. We are a nonprofit organization, so always donating to our mission is helpful. Can become a volunteer ambassador, just like Louis and Francesca are both deep, beautiful souls and beautiful volunteers for us with our summit. And then you can host a screening of the short film for your community or your friends. We will meet in any Zoom room. We will meet in any room. We would love to share our story with everyone so that they do have this understanding and awareness, and we begin to normalize conversations. I want to just close with gratitude for Louis and Francesca for sharing their story and their insights and their perspectives. I am continually inspired by both of you. Narelle, thank you for giving us this platform, and we are just so honored to spend time with you today.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure to host you guys, and thank you for sharing your stories. It was eye-opening, and the whole mission of Lorenzo's House is something that we at Viking Pure are very much behind, and just happy to be here and supporting this mission. So thank you all for joining us today. I will be following up later this afternoon with the replay from today's video, today's conversation. Feel free to share it with others. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.